Hey guys, this is Emma, and today we're getting into something that sits right at the end of a deal, but somehow carries all the risk contracts. It's not the exciting part, nobody really talks about it, but this is where things can quietly go wrong.
Good to be back, Emma.
So let me start here. Why does this part still feel so fragile? You'd think by now this would be the most locked-in step.
Yeah, you'd expect that. But what actually happens is everything before this stage is pretty fluid calls, negotiations, back and forth. And then suddenly, all of that has to be turned into something precise and legally solid. That jump is where things get tricky. You're taking conversations that had a bit of flexibility in them, and now you're trying to pin them down into exact wording, timelines, conditions.
Yeah, and I'm guessing not everything from those conversations is perfectly documented.
Exactly. A lot of it lives in context what both sides understood, what was implied, small adjustments that happened along the way. Now, when you sit down to write the contract, you're trying to reconstruct all of that. And it's usually happening under time pressure, because everyone wants to close.
So it's not just writing, it's remembering, interpreting, and translating all at once.
That's a big part of it. And because agents are handling multiple deals, they don't start from scratch every time they use templates or previous contracts and adapt them, which works, but also creates room for mismatch, because every deal has its own specifics.
Can you give me an example of where that mismatch shows up?
Yeah, timelines are a common one. Let's say in conversation, both parties agreed on a flexible closing window. But when the contract is drafted, it ends up with a fixed date pulled from a previous template. Now, technically, the contract is valid, but it doesn't fully reflect what was discussed. And that's where friction starts later.
Right, because no one notices until it actually matters.
Exactly. These aren't obvious errors, they're small misalignments that surface at the worst time.
So, where does AI step in without making this feel like you're handing over something too sensitive?
It comes in more like a support layer. Instead of starting with a generic template, the system builds a draft based on the actual deal input's property type, terms, timelines. But what really helps is that it keeps checking things as you go. If something doesn't line up like a clause that conflicts with another, it flags it early.
So you're not discovering issues at the end, you're catching them while you're still building the document.
Exactly. And that reduces a lot of that background doubt, did I miss something? You're still in control of the contract, but you're not relying entirely on memory and manual checks.
Yeah, that probably makes the closing stage feel a lot less stressful overall. Sanjeev, this was a really good one. It's one of those parts of the process people don't think about much, but clearly carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, it's easy to overlook until something goes wrong.
And to everyone listening, if everything feels smooth until the paperwork shows up, that might be the part worth paying attention to. Stay with us, and we'll be back with more conversations like this coming up.